What made him this way? What is the attraction? What keeps us fascinated? A wise man once said, many times. For over a decade, Chris Chan was the internet's favorite horror show, the most documented Lolcow of all time, the Sonichu guy, the trolled to insanity cautionary tale. But in 2026, no epic meltdown, no grand finale, just a 40-something ex-YouTuber wandering between Walmarts, card shops, and extremely schizophrenic Twitter posts while everybody quietly moves on. The reality is, Chris Chan is boring now, and that's exactly why this is the last chapter. This video is about how Chris Chan fell off.
Hello, ladies and gentlemen, girls and boys, and dudes of all teenagers.
Yeah, I think every single person watching this video already knows who Chris Chan is, so I am not about to rehash every single saga of this man's life. You can go watch Geo Samuel if you'd like to see that. This video is going to be more about why the show is over, how Chris Chan fell off from relevancy, and why this is probably for the best. Now that being said, I'm probably still going to have to give a brief recap on this guy, so if you don't want to see that, then here's the timestamp so you can skip right past. You already know the basics. Autistic kid in Virginia makes Sonichu, gets discovered by a bunch of early internet forums, and in the mid-2000s being discovered by 4chan and Encyclopedia Dramatica as well, and becomes the Lolcow template. Some people consider him to be the very first Lolcow. Without a shadow of a doubt, he is the most famous Lolcow and the most well-known, even having his fair share of references in mainstream media such as the Sonic Boom cartoon and Smiling Friends.
Do you realize something? If we fail this inspection, we could lose our office and we'd have to move out of it.
Years of trolling escalate from prank calls and fake girlfriends into full-on psychological manipulation, doxing, and constant harassment campaigns. Then 2021 happens, the leaked phone call where Chris openly describes sexually assaulting his elderly mother, and the incest threats that turns the internet clown into an actual sex offender. This is the point where Chris Chan went from a lolcow to what is known as a horror cow. Lolcows that have committed some very atrocious crimes against humanity. A very well-known example being Cyrax. Chris is arrested in August of 2021, held in jail, then sent to a Western State hospital after being found incompetent to stand trial. After about a year of bouncing between jail and psychiatric care, Chris is declared competent and the case quietly moves forward. This is the point where, historically, you'd expect a high-profile trial, wall-to-wall coverage, and some massive meltdown. But that did not happen. You know, here's a good question. What were you doing when Chris Chan got arrested? Because I sure as hell remember. Just like how people remember exactly what they were doing or what they were wearing during 9/11. I remember that me and my cousin went out fishing and I had landed the largest largemouth bass I have ever caught in my life. Then I go home and I found out that Chris Chan fucked his mom, and now he's in jail. So I want y'all in the comments to tell me if you remember what you were doing when Chris Chan got arrested. Anyways, back to the video. After almost 2 years inside, Chris is suddenly out. March of 2023, Virginia's Vine system shows that Chris has been released by court order, and jail confirms that there is no Chandler in custody. Fact-checked independent American patriots confirm that yes, the literal motherfucker is no longer in jail. On August 8th of 2023, the incest case is dismissed under an autism-related deferred disposition arrangement, meaning that the court basically routes it through an alternative process because of Chris's autism and mental state. Yet another W from our justice system. Don't you love it? Hide your boyfriend-free grandmas because Chris Chan is on the loose. No, it's kind of similar to what happens to people like Daniel Larson and Cyrax, where pretty much nothing really happens to them when they get charged with pretty bad crimes. They always just have some kind of metaphorical plot armor that God just gives them for some reason. You know, it's like that quote from Fear and Loathing. Too weird to live, too rare to die. They have pretty much nothing to look forward to in the free world, yet they're kind of just thrown out of jail for some reason. And the biggest reason as to Chris's fall off from relevancy that you're going to find in this video is he really hasn't been doing a whole lot. You know, there really just isn't much to talk about, and you know, he's been kind of cited like Bigfoot everywhere. Like there's these pictures that come up, and it's clearly just people taking pictures of him in public, which, by the way, don't do that, that's fucking weird. But anyway, that's basically all there is. So there was like a point in time for like a solid almost a year where we knew almost nothing about what he was doing. Basically all these cow tubers who were previously just rolling in it from making all this Chris Chan money, they basically just had to speculate for a pretty long time on his actual whereabouts, you know? It was definitely a strange change of pace. But yeah, anyways, once Chris was free, the quote-unquote lore drops turned into something that would have been completely unremarkable about 10 years ago. It had basically just been like how Chris Chan was in the 90s. You know, people would take pictures of him doing random things in public, mostly just playing trading cards, doing stuff at game stores, and being out in public. However, there was a key detail that made Christorians go wild with speculation. A recurring blonde woman, later known as Flutter, appears with Chris in multiple sightings in 2023 and 2024, from local restaurants and airports to even trips abroad. By late 2023, it's confirmed that Chris had his own car again, and he was basically just driving around and living a low-budget, deeply unexciting life. You know, that's honestly kind of relatable. In 2024, Quickie logs multiple sightings of Chris out in public, while emphasizing that his online presence was heavily declined compared to the 2010s. Threads and posts about him were increasingly read like, "Saw Chris today, he bought snacks, that's it." He isn't streaming epic freakouts, he isn't responding to all the trolls, he's just standing in line at Sheets like anybody else. Also, another thing, Chris Chan has kind of gained a huge spike in notoriety pretty much ever since the whole Geo Samuel documentary came out. Gamer from Mars also made another very successful documentary series on YouTube, and that definitely exposed a lot of people to Chris Chan.
Boy, okay, now I just feel like I have to do this. First time in here, I feel like I gotta do this. Hello, my name is Apu. I went to
No. You don't have to do that.
But it was 100% this 2021 incest situation that put him in the mainstream. And with that comes a bunch of people from TikTok that know absolutely nothing about Chris Chan that want to be the next Clyde Cash. They're a bunch of unfunny weens that have absolutely nothing better to do with their lives. Not even troll someone like Daniel, who definitely deserves it. However, I will say this, I think it is pretty surreal and kinda creepy that Chris Chan just kinda became this cryptid that you could just see out in public. You know, if you're in like anywhere near the Northern Virginia area, there's a good chance you could run into this guy. That's not me saying you should go out and track him, but you know, just be aware.
I see. The Kiwi Farms people are in the Telegram talking about mass reporting my stream. Hey, look.
The Keffals saga. I bet you haven't heard that name in years. Keffals was another online figure who was relentlessly trolled on Kiwi Farms, even leading a campaign to get the farms taken down, which succeeded in late 2022, although the site went back up. However, you may ask, why is she getting trolled so bad? Granted, targeted harassment is never justified, and unfortunately she was the victim of a swatting, but why was Keffals so hated? Surely it's because she's a trans woman, right? Well, that's not the full story. In 2024, Keffals was exposed for not only having a Discord server full of minors, but also selling estrogen to minors behind their parents' back, all in order to groom them into transitioning genders. Since then, her and her husband tried to raise money for a GoFundMe in order to relocate and sue against harassment. But unfortunately, Keffals decided to embezzle over $100,000 and proceed to literally spend that money on drugs, among other things that were not a part of the legal fund. And overall, it was just a massive shit show in 2024. Now, this is not a video about Keffals, but how she became relevant to the story was the fact that in her campaign to take down Kiwi Farms, she held an interview with none other than Christian Weston Chandler, another innocent trans goddess who was bullied by the evil alt-right chuds. Basically, this entire interview is what you'd expect. Chris going off on his usual delusions of grandeur, Keffals ignoring the fact that she's platforming a literal rapist, and just Chris's usual narcissistic sob stories and that he doesn't deserve all this backlash. Though through the whole interview, you'll notice that Chris has a very detached way of conducting himself, which is a pattern that you'll pick up on pretty much all of his clips leading up to and after his release.
Looking back, do you have any regrets?
Well, I'd say just essentially let myself fall for the theoretical X's, as I call them, and let them do me over. The blue spike that held my PlayStation Network accountable and saw the loss of Sanchi Medallion number 2. And I do appreciate that, they had to help shape and develop me mentally and emotionally so I could have that damage within me to be stronger and more ready for it in the longer run, so that I could actually finally do something about it within present tense in the recent years, especially after I managed to clear my mind over the past couple of years. So every blessing counts.
Also, not gonna lie, something I find pretty funny about the whole interview is Chris clearly is not trans. In other news, water's wet. We've known this for a very long time. By his own admission, he says he has done it to hit on lesbians. And there's a really funny part of the interview where Chris basically goes on about how the trolls used to send him gay shit back in the day. And this is like right after Keffals is talking about getting doxxed and shit.
Yep, all the homophobia. I mean, I was affected by that as well. And then just the trolls on the internet bullying me and thrusting gay images on me. Like when I had the Wikipedia and the individuals behind that, they just put them on the sides. Like, these gay boy ads lead to like porn sites or whatever. Just
like this guy who is supposedly a woman just cannot cope with the fact that people joke about him being a homosexual. Like, it seems like your logic's a bit backwards, my guy. I think trying to become a woman by eating a bunch of estrogen and dyeing your hair blue and doing some unspeakable things to your own body, I think that's a whole lot gayer than just seeing some gay shit posted on your website, but who am I to judge?
We will be sending hormones to dudes of our teenagers.
To say that people grilled Keffals for this interview was an understatement, as this was one of the many reasons people used against Keffals when she went through her drama on the internet. Let me be clear about what just happened. Keffals literally scraped the bottom of the barrel, getting a literal incestual rapist to come and defend her on a show just because people were saying mean things about her on the internet. Although, despite the criticism that she got for platforming a literal sex offender, she didn't really succeed in giving Chris any momentum, which in all fairness would be impossible given Chris's Godzilla-sized digital footprint. Instead, this just gave us more Chris fatigue. It proves that there's nothing new here, just the same old delusions in a slower, emptier package. Only this time, it's like he's being dragged with the social movement just so someone would listen to his incoherent ramblings. Now, another thing to happen later in 2024 was definitely something that spiked Chris Chan's relevancy, and it all came from one of his otherwise boring live streams.
When the child is actually coming into play, or somewhere around that point, or I just might keep y'all in the dark and let y'all know it wait till after the child is born.
When somebody donated to him on a live stream, by the way, this guy's a fucking loser, I don't know why he'd give money to a sex offender, he asked Chris Chan when he was going to announce that he was having a baby, because apparently this person had some insider knowledge that nobody else knew. And Chris decided to give an alarmingly vague response. Now, of course, as you can imagine, everybody lost their shit when they realized that Chris Chan could be possibly having a child. And for good reason. This guy is just about the least qualified person to be raising a child, along with the fact that he has said some pretty disturbing things about his own hypothetical children in the past. But alas, nothing came out about this. There is no evidence that him, and presumably Flutter, were having children. And thankfully, that ended up being the case. And also, I think it was obviously just bullshit. Chris is the most unreliable narrator ever. He's literally deranged. Although I think the concern is justified, he is definitely not having children. This is just one of his delusions. And I hope, whoever Flutter is knows about this, and does not let it happen.
You've written those smut fanfictions. You shipped me with Barbara. You shipped me with that Snorlax.
For a long time, Chris wasn't just a lolcow. He had become a horror cow, as I mentioned previously. Obviously, the biggest horror cow event that he had ever done was Boinkin' Barb. But also, there were jail letters about him being a literal goddess, dimensional merges, and cosmic delusions that turned the story from goofy to genuinely kind of unsettling, both for those who are uninitiated with Chris and for Christorians alike. And most importantly, some of these letters even confirmed the sexual abuse of his mother. This had stopped being a funny train wreck and became a genuine true crime case. It's a depressing reality that there is no cure, no redemption arc, and no entertainment value left that doesn't look like punching someone who's already been completely broken. Also, Chris definitely isn't very free anymore. As I mentioned, he has some caretakers, known as the Praetor Group, and to be honest, we really don't know a whole lot about them, and that's for the best. They've definitely got Chris down on lock and key, and they realized that unfiltered internet access for him really was never a good idea. All of the trolling definitely shaped Chris and who he was. Not saying that it wasn't justified, or that he isn't worthy of criticism, but it definitely didn't help. And also the fact that his parents did not know how to handle a child with autism, especially in the 1980s. Also, given the fact that they did not understand the internet and there was a large generational gap between them, which is not good for a child with a social disability. Chris Chan wasn't just a lolcow, he was a historical artifact of a very specific internet. The quickie and decades of forum threads have turned him into one of the most obsessively cataloged individuals alive. Every forum post, every Facebook rant, every weird drawing, archived, timestamped, mirrored across wikis and forums. This simply just can't happen again, because platforms are more aggressive with bans, privacy protections, and content nukes. Sites like Kiwi Farms have been deplatformed and pushed to the margins, as seen with Keffals. Also, another thing, the internet was a much more toxic place back then. I'm sure any of you who have survived to see Modern Warfare 2 lobbies know just how toxic that shit was. Now we live in a day and age where you could just mute people who are harassing you. You get instantly banned if you even troll anybody. And cyberbullying is a much more known phenomenon now, and there are measures against it, and it's taken way more seriously. I don't know about you, but if you were like me and you were in public school in the 2010s, cyberbullying was a major issue that they talked about, and they drilled it into our heads that it was not acceptable. These are changing times. Also, another thing, all of these forums that Chris Chan were on are pretty niche now. Kids aren't really using them anymore. If they want to bully a lolcow, they'll probably just do it on TikTok. However, back in the early internet, forums were extremely popular, and they were kind of your go-to source of social interaction. Point is, all the modern lolcows are interchangeable clips, while Chris Chan is a 20-year-old case file. You'll still get your weirdos, freakouts, and manipulative trolls, but you'll never ever again get a single person whose entire adult life is documented, cross-indexed, and narrated in real time by thousands of obsessed strangers in the way that Chris's was. Now honestly, this isn't really a good or a bad thing. It's just the reality of how the internet has evolved over these years. I think we should be thankful because a lot of the shit that we knew about Chris Chan, I think a lot of us would rather not know. Plus, I genuinely cannot think of a bigger waste of time than just reminiscing about Chris Chan. Honestly, there's much more productive things I could have been doing with my time than just sitting down and making this video. I could have made a video that taught you a useful life skill. I could have made a video about my cute little lizard. I could have made a video about anything other than this predator. But here we are.
Yeah, I know. But this is of importance because we gotta protect this space bridge.
Damn right, this is him.
Now, the saga of the so-called most documented man in history did not end with a bang. It fizzled out. It ended with a whimper. The incest case was dismissed via an autism-related disposition instead of a cinematic trial. Not too different from P. Diddy. Although Chris just straight up wasn't sentenced. Chris just wanders around Virginia, occasionally leaving the country, having some weird relationship with Flutter, shilling half-baked projects, and making old forgettable streams. His channel now is more focused on making Transformers videos, as that's basically all he's uploaded within the past year. The hardcore watchers are still there, logging sightings and archiving posts, but as a whole, the broader internet has moved on. The most cataloged lolcow of all time is now, functionally, a background character. No one's refreshing the thread for the next big saga, because the big saga is finally over. And in a messed up way, that's probably the only ending this story could have. Not a dramatic redemption, not a shocking finale, just a boring, lonely, quiet afterlife for someone who spent 2 decades being watched like a zoo animal. And to be honest, I think Chris should be very thankful of this, as all things considered, he got off pretty easy. You know, I guess for an analogy, Chris Chan's life is sort of like the life of a used Honda Civic that was driven way past what it was built for. It started out as a harmless beater owned by old people, Barb and Bob, before the teens, the internet, got the keys, gave it too much boost, and thrashed it for years until the engine finally blew up. Now, it doesn't race, it doesn't crash, it just sits like a faded lawn ornament, something people glance at and say, hey, remember that? And they move on, soon to see itself in a junkyard. So is the story of CWC. Now, this video is not me defending Chris Chan in any way. Quite honestly, he's a pretty shitty person. He's a narcissist, and above all else, he is a sex pest that has turned into an incestuous rapist. However, what I am saying is this era is over. The people who are made fun of online will have their moment in the limelight, and they will eventually fade out, or alternatively, they will be like World of T-shirts and turn it into a successful brand. Or, the third option, they eventually go to prison. There really is no in-between. Because of this, I don't think I'll be making any more Chris Chan videos in the future, unless something crazy happens of course, which I doubt will be the case. However, I am open to talking about other lolcows, so if you guys would like to see that, please leave some suggestions in the comments below, as well as any video ideas or other people you'd like me to cover. All that really matters is that Chris is left up to his own devices, and he can't hurt anybody else. Although in a perfect world, he'd be in prison right now, but I guess that's just asking for too much. Anyways, thank you guys for all the support I got on my iDubbbz video. That video did so well, it did way better than I thought it would ever do. It is my most viewed video on this channel, and for that, I thank you. Also, I have gotten a huge influx of subscribers within the last couple of weeks, and I would like to personally welcome you all to my channel. I want you all to know that you guys are my elites. You guys are my OGs. When I blow up and I have several thousand subscribers, I want you guys to remember that you guys saw that happen. And that's a gift. That's something you can brag about. You were the OG Triple Take fans, and I thank you for that. So stay tuned as I upload many more videos to come. I'm gonna try to do bi-weekly as I am starting a new job, and I'm very excited about that. So my time is gonna be somewhat limited, but I'm gonna at least try to get one 15 to 20 minute video out every other week. And if I grow enough, I can get my own full-time editor so I can maybe do weekly uploads. But right now, I'm going to try to focus on quality versus quantity, because my videos are very well edited and there is a lot of time and energy that goes into them, at least compared to many other channels of my similar size that are also growing just as I am. I hope you all have a wonderful night, and if you think I deserve it, go ahead and give me a subscribe and turn on that bell, because I know you're not going to regret seeing my videos. At least I hope. I mean, just look at her though. Could you blame him?